Okay, so today I got my one of my good friends, Mr. Lee Nichols, all the way from Truro, Nova Scotia, I believe.
That is correct, good sir.
So today I wanted to mostly talk about our lives here in Vancouver, Canada as guitar teachers. But just to start out, just so people know, the people like we've played with, we actually have an artist that we've both worked with in common, Sean Hook.
Yeah, yeah. Played with Sean for a while, and let's see, Tyler Shaw did a tour with him.
Yeah, I keep on
Uh,
hearing Tyler Shaw on the radio, and I'm like, oh, like, did you do any recordings with him or the tour?
no, no, just live work.
Yeah,
We did a tour out on the East Coast, but yeah, great singer, man, absolutely phenomenal. Um, and then I've worked for a number of years with Patrick Massey. Um, and I've started working with a new artist called Sid Carter West, who's
oh,
fantastic as well. Um, and then I've played with Justin Wilkie and Rally Car for
oh
more
yeah,
years than I count.
yeah.
We're working on an EP actually right now that we're just about wrapped up on. All the tracking's done, so now I just have to mix it and master it and get it out there.
Great.
So that's cool. And let's see, I know I'm forgetting about 1.5 million other people here.
Well,
Uh,
you when are because man, you played me some stuff at the Morrissey pub on Granville Street, and man, you had some killer songs, and I'm just like, whoa, these songs are killer. When are those coming out? You must be
uh,
working on those.
I mean, one of these days, yeah, I've been trying to kind of dust some stuff off and worked with a lyricist on one tune that I put together. So hopefully I can get those out sooner rather than later. Um,
Man, those when you played those songs at Morrissey, I was blown away. I was just like, because I knew I always yeah I've known you as like a killer guitar player. Like right when I met you, I was just like, man, this guy is killer. And I've only really seen you as a guitar player, and we've played in cover bands and stuff a lot together. Um, and I've mostly seen you as a cover singer slash cover guitar player. And
yeah,
I've seen you play with original artists, but and you do well on that too. But when you played me those songs, I was like, he's been holding a full house in his hand.
yeah. I mean, one of these days I'll put them out. I've just always kind of been more comfortable in the in like the sideman role. You know, I've always kind of pictured myself more as a guitarist more so than anything else.
Yeah,
Uh,
I've always felt the same way. And it's funny when you get pushed to the front of the band. It's very uncomfortable for
it's
me.
weird.
It is weird, like whenever you're starting a new band or whatever, and you have to decide who's going in the center. I'm never the guy that's like, oh, I guess I'll go in the center. But sometimes sometimes I know that it's like everyone's expecting me in the center, and I'm like, ugh, and I just like, okay. But well, one great thing about me and you is we can like switch instruments and play. You can play bass, and I'll play guitar, and we can switch instruments and both be in the center at different times. I always admired Sloan, great Canadian, great Halifax band, or yeah,
Great
Halifax.
Halifax band, man.
Yeah, I always loved them for that. Um, actually, a little name drop thing. I was in. I went down to the Nashville SoCan house. Do you know about this? There's a house in Nashville.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you're a member of SoCan, which is free to sign up for, I believe, then you can go down to this house in Nashville and stay in Nashville for like 2 weeks. I went down there and I saw Sloan was playing at a club. It wasn't even in Nashville. It was like outside of Nashville.
It's
But
outskirts of Nashville kind of thing.
yeah,
Cool,
and
man.
I just saw this sign. Sloan's playing, and and you must know Greg McDonald, eh? The Goose. No?
Not off the top of my head.
Oh,
Great with
okay.
names, terrible with names. So
Yeah, maybe. Well, he's moved out to Toronto, but I saw him. We used to play with his old band Pepper Sands, and the I saw the Sloan, and I'm like, oh, I know Greg's been playing keyboards with them. So I went down there during what I assumed was sound check, and they were like, I was like, is the band around? And they were like, oh, they're just eating behind the club. So I went back there and I saw Greg, and he's like, what are you doing here? And we laughed, and he said, "Oh, let me put you on the guest list." I came back, uh, and I watched the concert, killer concert. Like I'm a massive Sloan fan, as I'm sure you
yeah,
are.
and they're so good live.
Oh, just
So
one
good
of
live.
the greatest Canadian bands ever. And so
Absolutely.
I watched the show. They finished the show, and out comes they go they go backstage and then come back out for their encore. But the drummer grabbed the guitar and he was going to sing, and the
Yeah.
bass player, Chris, he wasn't. He didn't come out, and so they were like, "Hey, does anybody play drums out there?" And Greg's like, "Hey, my buddy Aaron plays drums," and so I jumped up and on stage and got to play. Do you know People of the Sky?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, they're like they just started playing People of the Sky, and I don't really know the song, but I just played a beat, and
Yeah, yeah.
oh man, killer. Anyways, so
Amazing.
long Sloan story. So, what I wanted to talk about today was like we've both been guitar teachers. I've been doing it since '99, so more than
Wow.
20 years. When did you start?
I started, I was actually trying to figure this out the other day. Um, I think it was around, I want to say like 2003 or four, somewhere and around there.
So kind of the same, like around 20 years. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, just shy of it.
yeah.
Just shy of it.
Okay, so hopefully we've learned a lot since in those last 20 years about
Yeah, questionable. But
teaching guitar. Yeah. So where I wanted to start is when somebody comes in for their first guitar lesson with you, what's your I'm sure you have a first guitar lesson.
yeah, man. I mean, my first lesson, and I've always kind of sworn by this. I don't really come in with kind of a set plan of what to do, and I basically sit and play psychologist for the first little bit, just to get an understanding of kind of where they're at as musicians, and with the company that you and I both work for, it's like we get kind of like maybe a sentence of what their musical experience is, and it doesn't really give me a lot to kind of jump off from. So I'll tend to kind of pick their brain and completely put them on the spot, and try and get an idea of their just understanding of music as a whole. But usually I'll kind of start with really basic stuff like finger exercises and coordination things. So that like 1, 2, 3, 4 exercise that everybody hates.
Actually, that's a good point. Do you start it looked like you start at the first or the thickest
Yep.
string and go 1, 2, 3, 4 and then go to the next string 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yep.
I've always started from the thinnest string, but I've noticed when you start at the thinnest string and go up, it gets harder and harder, and they get more discouraged as
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
go
It's
up.
like I start with the big string. It's like, get used to it right off the bat, right?
Yeah,
And then again, like it depends on the individual student too, right? If it's you know, a little kid that's like maybe 5 or 6 and they don't have a lot of experience. I mean, how could they at that age? But like sometimes I'll get parents that send a kid in with like a full size guitar and they're barely the size of the guitar themselves. So in those cases, I'll try and just kind of like get them on the high E string just to kind of like keep them interested and keep them going. But then, yeah, it's usually like have a talk with the parents and be like, yeah, that guitar is the size of your child. This is no
well,
good.
which actually brings me to the second thing I was thinking of is I believe the most popular guitar method book that everybody starts out with is the Hal Leonard book, right? I would assume.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I mean that's one that you tend to see come in with people all the time, and I'm really not sure why that is.
yeah, I
Uh,
think it just I yeah whoever whatever the circumstances, it has become
it's
the
a de
most
facto
common.
book. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, it's like the de facto book that everybody's like, well, you should probably pick that up too.
just,
Um,
and I actually have grown to like it just for the fact that it teaches you basic reading, how to read musical notation, but
right off the bat.
yeah, yeah, and there's obviously the long debate over tablature versus musical notation. I'm
We're not going
personally
down that road.
no, but even though I'm personally a tab guy, I grew up on tab. I didn't read music until I was in my I went to music school when I was 17, so I
Right.
that's kind of around the time I started maybe 16 reading music, and I was horrible at it. But I did musical theater where I had to read music, and my teacher let me write in with a pencil, write in the
Right.
notes
Right
above.
in the note names
Yeah.
underneath.
And so
Yeah.
the practice of doing that helped me learn notes a little bit, but obviously it's a crutch. But I still actually let kids write in the note names, but I don't write it in for them. I
Yeah.
make them write it in so that they can recognize their handwriting, and maybe like
Yeah.
years later, if they still have the book, they'll be like, "Oh, look at how bad my handwriting was." But I think they might have a connection with the act of doing that. And you know how
Yeah, like I think the act of writing actually helps with retention, right? It,
yeah,
it
yeah.
actually helps you kind of memorize things. So there's value in that for sure. I think
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. And even though so I'm assuming you're a tab guy as well.
Yeah, I mean, it's handy,
It
and I can read. Like it's not a problem, but to take the figuring out or like figuring out where the fingering is and that sort of thing, that saves a huge amount of time.
huh.
Um, when you're sight reading, you don't get the luxury of you know knowing whether the E is played here or open or here or what have you. So
Yeah, yeah,
um,
like a good tablature guy will put you in the right position.
yeah, they'll get you in the zone a lot faster.
Yeah, yeah.
So
Uh,
so that's nice. And yeah, in terms of teaching, it does get kids up and running a lot faster. And honestly, I'm sure you know, one of the biggest challenges of the job is just keeping the guitar in the student's hands.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
there to learn, but it's like it's hard to learn an instrument when it's sitting in a stand in the corner.
Well,
So
yeah, and I noticed there's a big difference between uh, students who go home and if they leave the guitar in the case, it doesn't get played, obviously. But then
yeah,
if it comes out of the guitar and onto the stand, it will get played sometime, or you know what I mean, sometimes. And those students
yeah,
might be a little more disciplined. They might be kind of the students that always practices on the Tuesday after their Monday lesson. They might be really disciplined, but I think the
yeah.
students that take the guitar out of their case and put it on their bed. I think that's what I was. I think those are the
Those
students.
are the kids that like, it's a rainy Saturday, so it's like all of a sudden it's like, well, might as well spend 6 hours with this thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, like that's really what it takes, right? To become proficient, I think, in any instrument. It's got to be kind of something that you eat, sleep, and breathe.
Yeah.
And it's a lot easier to achieve when it's staring you right in the face. It's a lot harder to ignore it when it's out of the case and staring you down in your room.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. The 10,000 hour rule, I think,
yeah,
hey.
right.
It's funny because now I've been learning jujitsu and I'm applying all these techniques that I've been hammering home to these students to my own learning in jujitsu.
Cool.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. So Now, I think we would both probably agree that there's an argument for both musical notation and tablature, but tablature being more specific to the guitar really gives it an edge over musical notation, but musical notation kind of spans over other instruments. So if you start playing piano,
Yeah.
for instance, then you're used to reading musical notation, you could easily do it. Like I think musical notation is suited for the piano specifically.
Oh yeah, like it's. I mean, my piano playing is rather rudimentary at best, but yeah, it does make more sense, right? As with that instrument in mind. But that being said, yeah, like you bring up a good point. It's like it's universal then,
Yeah,
right? So you even if you take on other stringed instruments, it's like yeah, they have tablature for bass, yeah, they have tablature for ukulele, but if you understand kind of the range of that instrument, I find like learning to sight read gives you a lot better understanding of the range of the instrument that you're playing. Um, so, I mean, I think that's really handy from a student perspective too. That way, learning how to play mandolin if you already play guitar is pretty straightforward, right? Or ukulele or any kind of stringed instrument is fairly easy to understand when you have a basis in this, right?
it's funny you bring up mandolin. And you grew up playing mandolin, I think, right?
Yeah, kind of toying around with it a little bit here and there. But
Ironically, you said learning the guitar is it sets you up for learning the mandolin, but ironically the tuning is more like a violin
yeah,
than
or like an upside down bass guitar, right? That's really small.
yeah, I've always told people the same thing. Uh, and technically, the guitar is tuned to fourths, whereas violins and mandolins are tuned to fifths.
Or two fifths. Yeah.
Yeah, but ukulele is like the bottom four strings of a guitar. Hey,
Yeah, with that weird G string that just screws everything up. But
yeah.
yeah.
Plus, they're transposed. As a guitar teacher, they'll throw the ukulele students at you anyways, and you quickly find out, oh, wait a second, it's just the skinny four
Yeah,
strings of
it's
a
pretty
guitar.
straightforward, right?
Yeah, but I one thing that bugs me about ukulele is the standard ukulele. It's a tenor ukulele. That's the common one.
Um I
Uh,
think like
or
concert uke
soprano. Yeah.
is what they
So
generally call it.
what whatever the common one is, it is tuned in ratio, like it's tuned similar to the skinny four strings of a guitar, but it's also
Yeah.
transposed up a fourth. So,
Yeah.
like if you play a D chord on a D chord on the guitar, looks like that, but then
Yeah.
on
That
on
becomes a
a
G, right?
yeah the on the and
Yeah.
so that can get kind of annoying to be like as a teacher, you're transposing a lot. Um,
Oh yeah, for sure. I kind of like that though. Honestly, it's like it keeps you on your toes when you're teaching. It's like you get a ukulele student right in the middle of your day. It's like all of a sudden, yeah, that transposing part of your brain kicks in and actually kind of keeps you engaged and keeps you kind of fully in the zone as far as that goes. So I kind of like getting those students.
it adds a challenge for you, hey?
Yeah, it keeps you from going into too much of a state of autopilot, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Which I
Um,
mean, it's like if you're doing 8, 9, 10 lessons a day, it's like at a certain point, it gets hard not to kind of like, you know, be in that autopilot state of mind. And it's like, well, your students aren't paying for that, right?
yeah.
It's like they're paying for you to be engaged. So it's kind of nice to have those where it forces you out of your comfort zone and makes you think a little bit more.
It's funny is I believe that like in life I was destined to be a music teacher and not so much a performer. I enjoy performing, but mostly for the interaction I have with other musicians or to try songs that I like as a solo performer. I like to just I like to just wing it and try songs I've never played before.
Yeah, man.
But
Yeah, I mean, you're kind of legendary around Vancouver for that, right? It's like, it's like, hey guys, let's just try this. It's like, Aaron, do any of us know this song? No, no, but let's just do it. It's fine.
oh my God. I've had so many musicians mad at me for just jumping into All Star by Smash Mouth or something.
Or trying to
And
put the melody from the Final Countdown in literally every song in the set. Right?
oh my God. You know what's funny? You've probably seen this, but for anybody who, if anybody watches this, a good buddy of ours, Paul Gibbons, who we both played with for years, he we did a Halloween show. I think it was out at Cascades. Um, and Paul was wearing like the most ridiculous um, outfit. It is so funny. And
Oh yeah,
I
wasn't it that one from Big Comfy Couch or whatever? He was dressed up as like the I guess the main actor in that show or something, or like a weird take on it. But yeah,
oh,
I know what you're talking about.
oh yeah, that makes
Phenomenal in the
sense.
sense it was absolutely ridiculous.
Like a yeah, he looked like a goofy, cartoonish, like children's entertainer or
Yeah, oh
something.
yeah, for sure.
Um, but actually, that reminds me of another thing. But so Paul filmed this Halloween show where, as Halloween, I've done this a whole bunch of times where I dress up as Slash because Slash was my hero growing up, and
Right.
the reason that I started playing guitar. And so I actually I should say Eddie Van Halen was why I started playing guitar, but then I gave up because I thought, oh, I'm never gonna play like Eddie Van Halen. And then when Slash came around, I saw my best friend's older brother playing Sweet Child of Mine, and I'm like, oh, maybe I can play guitar now. And so I tried that, and then kind of got into Slash that way. Anyways,
Yeah.
so I dressed up as Slash this one year, and Paul luckily filmed it, and it's so funny because I've done this for years, as you know. You guys probably always when I first started doing it, I don't think anybody liked it, but I've managed to find a way to put the intro to Sweet Child of Mine into every song that we play.
Yep.
and and usually if I've played with you, I usually do it like maybe I'll do it in one song a night, but I'll just do it the whole song or something as
Yeah,
a
yeah.
just kind of
We'll
a
be in
joke.
like the middle of like the middle by Jimmy Eat World or something, and be
Yeah,
like,
and I'll just play Sweet Child of Mine the whole song.
just like there, and you're like, oh, okay, got it there, right?
oh, to me it's so funny. But so in being that I was dressed up as Slash for Halloween, I thought it would be funny to play that intro in every song. So I did play it in every song, and Paul edited it, and it's on YouTube. It would be something like Cascades. The band was called Infamous Players Cascades Halloween Show.
Right.
Um, it's worth watching. Like it's just so funny. Anyways, to get back to the guitar thing,
Yeah,
um,
man.
the you were saying that your first lesson is usually like just gauging where the student is coming from, kind of thing.
Yeah,
Um,
and then I'll
uh,
just kind of jump from there.
Yeah, well, the funny thing is I recently, like about 2 years ago, I had this, and I'd like to get your opinion on this. I had this student where you can tell that they are getting discouraged because it's not going the way they expected or something.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is not an instant gratification instrument.
No,
Uh,
no, and it does weed out the people, but I think that applies to anything. When you get in, if you don't get the results you're looking for, like if you're a natural, then obviously you're motivated to stick with it. But then there
yeah,
are the kids like Have you heard that saying, hard work beats talent when talent refuses to work hard? Have you heard this?
No, but I like it.
Yeah, it is really cool. Like, a lot of people get discouraged because they're not good at something right away, but there's obvious success stories where somebody wasn't good at it right away, but they just couldn't help themselves. They just needed to become good,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know?
And I think sometimes, like it's kind of our job every now and again to kind of like remind them of where they started, right?
Yeah.
It's like I try and do that fairly often, actually. You know, especially if you have students that have been with you for a few years or something like that, and you can tell they're hitting the wall, they're getting discouraged and that sort of thing. I'm like, remember when you couldn't count to four? You know, and I think it's important to kind of keep that in mind, because otherwise, yeah, this thing will beat the crap out of you mentally if you let it. You know, and as an instructor and as a teacher, you know, yeah, you have to sometimes crack the whip if you know students aren't working and that sort of thing. And no, I'm not actually cracking the whip. I just mean, like, you know, get them to kind of, you know, get the let out and actually devote some time to the instrument. But I think as well, it's like it's really important to keep in mind, it's like you have to be the cheerleader for them sometimes when they're having trouble getting over that hurdle. You know, to motivate, you have to kind of remind them of how far they've come. You know, this isn't an easy instrument, and anybody that tells you that it is, I would have some very choice words that I like to use with them. But you know, yeah, and you have to kind of keep them from kind of getting too far down on themselves.
So the first lesson, I've kind of had my standard, you know, you do the 1, 2, 3, 4
Yeah,
exercise, and then I might introduce them to the Hal Leonard book and say, if they just learn open this just on the skinniest string, E, open, F, first fret, and G, third fret, if they just play those three strings for the first week, I kind of think,
yeah,
you know, like the baby steps towards playing all six strings. But I also get people to do the just because tuning a guitar is usually, it's not really, you can't count on them being able to tune the guitar, even if you show
yeah,
them like how to do it. Like I got the clip-on tuner, which is nice, but there's online guitar tuners and stuff, but you can't count on the student to know how to tune their guitar. So a lot of times I'll count on the parents. Sometimes
yeah,
the parents are better at tuning a guitar for their kids. But because you can't count on it, I a lot of times I'll get kids to do the just a major scale on the one string, the, you know, like
right.
just, and then on they can do it on each string, and then they start seeing the major scale as in a linear fashion rather than the standard up and down the strings scales that you have to learn eventually.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think learning them across one string gives you, like, that's something that everybody should do as well, though, right? To so that you have that mobility, right? If you want to move from position to position
Yeah,
within any given key, it's like, yeah, you've got to know where those are kind of linearly across the strings.
which actually brings me to another point. When we first get introduced to the pentatonic major scale, if I start at the fifth fret, or the pentatonic minor, it's 5, 8, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 7, 5, 8, 5, 8. So the last two
Yeah,
strings and the top string use your pinky. Lately, I've been thinking that the diagonal slippy slidey one, where it's like that one that kind of goes more diagonal and slides, and
yeah, like the frying
your
pan.
yeah, oh yeah, you talked about the frying pan, yeah.
Yeah,
And I always think of like you're only really using those two fingers,
yeah,
but I find like that one's just a more musical way of playing pentatonic scales.
yeah. And how often do we still always find ourselves going back to that well?
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Like
and
that's you get so much mileage out of that one shape.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's funny that people don't teach that approach. Like we talked before about how you you have like octave chunks in a diagonal
Yeah,
um, direction. So like any lick you play, you can just go down two strings and down two frets and play the
yeah,
same
the
lick.
Paul Gilbert thing, right? Where it's
Oh
because
yeah,
he goes on about that all the time,
yeah,
right? Where
string
it's like if you
skipping and
learned right from your typical minor scale, the first 6 notes out of your natural minor, it's like it's totally symmetrical, and then just kind of work it across the fretboard like that. It's yeah, you get so much
oh
more out of anything you learn.
oh, so you're kind of going 5 7 8 5 7 8 on the thickest strings, right?
Yeah, well, I think I was using G minor, but
Oh
yeah, it's like yeah, if you're in A, it'd just be 5 7 8 5 7 8, and
oh
then just kind of work.
yeah.
It.
Oh, and you know what's funny about that is you don't get mixed up in the offset G and B string stuff.
Yeah, yeah, it makes it a little bit easier to navigate
Yeah,
through
huh?
there. Yeah, because there's always that B string hang up, right? It's like that's it's called the B string on purpose, I think, because that's the bitch of a string that you know. So, yeah.
I'm a G string man myself, personally. But let's
uh,
that's for another discussion.
yeah,
Um
yeah, classic guitar player joke.
um
Yeah, but
we were just talking about first lesson, kind of like what you do. I actually about 2 years ago, I I I don't know why, but I just felt like that day, I just thought, I was just in a funny mood where I was just like, you know what? I'm not going to do the standard stuff that I normally do. And I took kind of a risk on this kid that I thought, man, I'm going to try something different with this kid. And I've actually talked to him about it. And so what it was is basically I I threw diatonic arpeggios at him, like six string sweep arpeggios on his first lesson. And the funny thing
and if
is
that's kept with it, that's a keeper. That kid's going places because
yeah,
if you can put up with that from the get go, yeah, that's something.
yeah, it was kind of like a huge risk where I could have like alienated the kid.
Totally.
But I gotta like, you know, some people have a gift of like physical you know, like dexterity. Like some people just like I assume you had some sort of physical dexterity, like maybe you're slightly athletic or something, because
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
your finger
Classic
dexterity.
Canadian lad, grow up in the hockey system and that
Oh
sort of
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Like I could kind of tell. And same with this kid. I could kind of tell he was I don't know. I'm gonna try and throw the hard stuff at this kid, and he came back the second week and he kind of had done it, and I told him like, hey man, like I hope you don't mind, but you know I kind of that first lesson I just got the vibe that that maybe I could challenge you right off the bat, and he was like, no, this is cool because it sounded pretty good to him when when he went home and practiced. He
Yeah.
had heard me doing it, and so when he went and tried it at home, he knew what it was supposed to sound like, and he knew what he was supposed to do, and it was hard for him, but he actually yeah, so he actually did really well right off the start, and now he's like
And those sorts of
shredding.
techniques are those sorts of techniques are all time spent. Like there's no shortcut. And I don't care how naturally gifted you are on the instrument. That takes a lot of like just sitting with it and just toughing it out. So
Yeah,
you're introducing that aspect of the instrument right off the bat, which is awesome. And if the student's up for it, that's a great way to kind of, really get a grasp for what this instrument takes. I do tend to rip on piano players a lot because it's like, I always
hey,
joke with
watch
them.
out.
I'm sure you get the same thing where they're like, oh, it's so hard to like push down and get the note to ring out. And it's like, yeah, no, piano players have it easy, you know, push button, get note, right? It's
Yeah,
like we have
yeah,
to
yeah.
wrestle this thing to the ground in order to get something out of it. So yeah, I do rip on piano players
Yeah.
probably. I just wish I could play piano well.
Well, I'm sure you're better than you're letting on. But piano is definitely an easier instrument to start, but possibly just as hard to master, I would say.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah,
Um,
I mean, you watch a master the instrument, and it's like I get so like piano envious. You know, it's like I
I'm,
get
I,
piano.
yeah, I'm sure you're not too far off. Like if you got to this high level on guitar, it was same thing. Like I think it would take you way quicker of a time to master piano as well. Like actually, it's kind of funny we're talking about this because just like you, I played guitar most of my life in bands, and then when I got offered the lights gig with my buddy was the drummer, and he phoned me up and said, "Hey, we might be adding a piano, another piano or another synth player to the band,"
Right.
and I was like, I remember telling him I don't play synth, like I don't play piano, and he said, "No, you'll be fine."
Yeah,
I
I
don't.
remember that because then because you took off and did that tour with Lights, and then the next time I saw you was in Poland, and we were playing
Oh,
there, and I had only ever known you as a guitar player and a singer. Um, well, and I drums as well because the first gig we ever played together, you played drums on. But yeah, and then all of a sudden it was like we're in this foreign country. I haven't seen you in months, and then you're playing half your playing is done on this keyboard that you had with you, and then like half of it's guitar, and I'm kind of like, what the hell?
well,
But yeah, those gigs are great because it forces you to just jump in and put those 10,000 hours in, right?
yeah, that's why I took the gig was because I knew it would get me, it would force me to be with my hands on piano notes, and I knew I would get better at the piano if I was doing it, especially on tour. I don't even think she knows that at how little of piano I played.
She does now. It's on the internet.
Yeah, yeah. Well, but when I first met her, she actually told me the first time I met her, playing piano isn't as much of a requirement as just being a good all around musician. Like she just wanted a good musician, and
Yeah,
my buddy Maury, who plays drums for her, he just kind of knew me as generally a musician, and
yeah.
so he was like, "Oh yeah, you'll be fine." And Lights even said when I first met her, the she said, "Well, Maury says you're a great musician, so and I know Maury's word counts, so yeah." And uh, Maury was right. It's funny because Maury always he always like it frustrates him when people don't listen to him the first time around because he's one of those guys that's generally right. He doesn't say anything unless it's worth saying or so
Kind of
everything.
thinks through very carefully before he opens his mouth.
Yeah. Anyways, if anybody has made it this far in the video, I'd be shocked. Yeah. If you did make it to the end of the video, please put a comment below or just tell me or Lee. I'd love to do maybe even a weekly. I don't know if that's too much dreaming, but maybe just the Vancouver guitar player or guitar teacher weekly podcast or something.
Nice. Yeah, that's great, man. I'd be down. I'd watch it.
Cool. We didn't even get into any share screen stuff, so maybe we'll have to do another one where we kind of show our favorite websites or PDFs or whatever or
Yeah,
something.
man.
Oh, and if you're interested or anybody out there, I put a whole bunch of guitar files on ultimateguitar.com. So if you go to ultimateguitar.com and search my name, Aaron Tyler Grant, you'll see what I think are the most valuable lessons that I've kind of acquired over the years. It's like arpeggios and pentatonic exercises and stuff like that. So if anybody's interested. And Lee, it was great, and hopefully we'll do this again.
Yeah, man. I'd love to. Anytime.
Cool. Thanks, Lee Nichols, everybody.